you tired of that same old boring acoustic guitar tone? I'm going to take a look at 5 effects today to level up your acoustic tone. So I was inspired by a recent Artist Toolkit that we did with guitarist Jenn Butterworth. Now, she's a traditional acoustic guitar player, but what I found so inspiring about that Artist Toolkit, which you can check out just by clicking above my head, was the fact that Jenn was running her guitar through a Neural DSP Quad Cortex. She was using a lot of effects just to kind of make her playing stand out just that little bit more and make it just that little bit more exciting, especially with like more of a sort of trad background. So that's exactly what I want to do today. I'm looking at 5 effects that I've loaded into a Quad Cortex here that personally I really like to use with acoustic. And a lot of these may be quite obvious, but I think for anyone who maybe hasn't experimented with using effects with their acoustic guitar, this might just kind of, get you out of a little bit of a rut if you're in one and if you do need a little bit of inspiration. Now, just to clear this up, before we get into any sounds, you don't need a Quad Cortex, a Neural DSP Quad Cortex for this. If you have individual pedals, you have any other multi-effects as well, this will work, even using plugins in a DAW or something like that. You probably will have access to something unless you just have acoustic guitars, and in that case, this can maybe be an inspiration for you to go out and start building your pedal board. But let's start with effect number 1. So the first effect that I want to talk about is using a pitched octave on the acoustic tone, which Jenn used herself in the Artist Toolkit episode also. What I've got set to here is actually an up octave and a down octave, which sounds like this. Which immediately, all those highs there are giving you the sort of impression of like a 12 string, but then the lows underneath it as well are just giving you like so much more like bottom end with your acoustic. So particularly there I was playing, like what would maybe be like a bass line or something like that. You did kind of hear me do it a little bit in the intro over that loop, but what I quite like when I've got like a high and a low octave, as well as your dry signal coming through, is actually playing like kind of higher lead lines on it, or just almost kind of like repeating parts to maybe put over a loop or something, or whatever you're doing. So something like this. Now, depending on the kind of octaver that you have, or kind of pitch effect as well, it will react differently when you're playing more than one note as well. The octaver that comes in the Neural DSP Quad Cortex is pretty good at tracking, but if you were to do that with some other ones, you may kind of get like a kind of glitchy sound as well. So for example, if I do like a full chord on this, there's a little bit of kind of wobbliness on some of those pitch there's, but in all honesty, I would predominantly be using this for like bass lines. Or even if you took out some of the high on it as well and you exclusively just had the sub octaves. And then much the same as well, if you just want those highs, you can bring that in. So immediately that's just giving you much more scope with your acoustic tones. Now let's move on to effect number 2. Number 2 is a tried and tested effect with acoustic, and that is chorus. Now I've got a pretty lush kind of 80s style chorus built into this patch right now, which especially when you're doing kind of arpeggiated chords, it sounds just absolutely lush. Now, not only does that give it like that kind of sparkle that you would expect when, you know, playing an electric guitar or something, but when I held that note there, it does give it quite a lot of like really nice movement as well. You know, not only are you getting the kind of natural sort of like movement and resonance from the acoustic guitar, but with the added effect on as well, it just, like, check this out. Like, that's just absolutely lush, and I can play over that for ages. And actually, a bit of a spoiler alert for a little bit later in the video, but let's try that with a little bit of reverb and go proper 80s with this. Stunning. I could play over that for absolute hours. Now, sticking with modulation for our third effect here, I've opted to use a tremolo, which I've actually got synced to the BPM of this, and we have a delay that I'm going to show in again. A little bit of a spoiler alert too for that. But I've got this synced up to about 120 BPM, and what I quite like with a tremolo particularly is that if you are kind of strumming chords, it does give you, again, just that little bit of movement, a little bit more kind of air to your acoustic guitar tone. So if I'm even just kind of strumming on a couple of chords here, now, of course, you can have that, you know, much more subtle. You can change the amount that that's syncing by as well. Here's like a quite kind of shallow tremolo. Again, really subtle there, but when you've got it in the context of a mix, or even if you are just playing by yourself as well, this could just be like a cool effect that you can throw on just to sort of, you know, kind of make a little bit more exciting as well. Now, on that kind of note of modulation, I do want to just make a kind of point to say that if you do want to use, say, something like a flanger, or say something like a phaser, like I've just put on here as well, if you do kind of have that at a kind of softer mix here, I'm going to really maybe put about 30% or 27 there. You know, you set up a flanger like that, you set up a phaser like that, it is going to just give you just like, again, a lot of movement to your sound as well, which, especially if you are recording with, again, playing live, even just playing live by yourself, it just gives it just another little flavour, which I think is really important with effects, with acoustic. Now, as I mentioned earlier, let's move on to some of the more sort of time-based effects here. So this is our delay patch. As you heard in the loop right at the start too, I've got it set to kind of a much more like rhythmic sort of sound. Now, you can set up just a kind of standard delay, you know what that's going to be like, but what I've opted for is just something just a little bit more exciting. So say, for example, you're playing in a band with an acoustic guitar, then you can be doing like kind of nice lead parts over in a sort of more rhythmic-y sort of sense, which personally with the tone of an acoustic guitar, I think just sounds awesome. Now that could either be, you know, a lead line or even just like a little bit kind of an exciting part in the start of a song. I mean, if you're even playing like arpeggiated chords or something, it just sounds super awesome. So particularly using that delay, let's combine a couple of the effects that I've already talked about. Imagine if you were on stage or you heard this on stage, it would just sound absolutely massive. So sticking with that particularly massive sound, the last effect that I want to talk about is reverb. Now this is not anything new to acoustic guitar, but the one that I've opted to put into the Quad Cortex here is a particularly large reverb, which when you're just playing solo as well, it just sounds absolutely incredible. Check this out. But obviously, make sure you don't play any wrong notes there, because that is just going to continue on for hours probably at that point. Now let's see what they all sound like combined together, because that's kind of part of the fun of it. I've activated the octaver, the chorus, the reverb, and the delay. And you know what? We'll bring that phaser in just a little bit later just to see how it sounds. Anyone here not on record would probably find it quite hard to believe that that was an acoustic guitar, but that's one of the things that I find so fun about adding effects to acoustic guitars. It's just that it gets you out of that sort of standard like playbook of acoustic playing. It makes you look at it just that little bit different. By no means am I saying like for you to get out of your creative rut that you need to get gear, but again, you'd probably be surprised that if you are an electric player as well, how well some of your effects that you already own will work with your acoustic guitar. And then, you know, if you do have a DAW, you've probably got a bunch of free plugins in there as well. So the kind of main message from this video is just experiment. You might find your new favorite sound, and certainly don't feel like you should be limited to, again, that kind of standard playbook of guitar playing. But thanks, Jen, for the inspiration for this particular video. If you have any effects that you particularly like to use with acoustic guitar, let me know in the comments. I'd be really interested in, actually, there could be a potential follow-up with this if there is anything that does inspire me. And while you're down there, give us a like and a subscribe, because it really does help the channel. But I've been Keiran, and this has just been a very quick look at some effect pedals and sounds that you can use with your acoustic guitar. Have a great day.